Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's The World This Week. We're in the company of Régis Le Sommier of French news weekly magazine Paris Match. British journalist Janet Jalil is with us. So is Aaron Zaleski of The Daily Beast, and Andre Neto of Brazilian daily newspaper O Estado de São Paulo. Just before the break, we were talking about Donald Trump underestimated at every turn. Crazy or crazy like a fox, Janet Jalil?
It would be crazy to predict, what's going to happen with Donald Trump. And I think part of the reason that Paul Ryan is holding back is because he's very worried about the House of Representatives and what's going to happen to the Congress people there. If Donald Trump goes completely off message and goes completely mad, a lot of Congress people could lose their seats. So I think that's why Paul Ryan is holding back, because he wants to try and impose on Donald Trump some discipline to make him actually sort of give a more moderate message. And whether that works, we'll have to wait and see. I would not like to predict, because as we've seen, a lot of people that have predicted whether Donald Trump was going to remain in the Republican nominee race have had to eat their words.
So we're still back to the question, Aaron Zaleski. Are all bets off when it comes to U.S. politics and everything is topsy-turvy, or is everything coming into the fold and we're just going to have normal conventions and normal candidates and a normal election?
Well, I think as long as Trump is running on the Republican ticket, I don't think it's going to be normal conventions. People saw the way he conducted himself during the primaries. Unless he gets some serious advice from some of the more moderate Republicans and he sort of rebrands himself in a way, a kind of more toned down, gentler Trump, I see it just continuing to be pretty insane.
All right, if Europeans could vote, no points for guessing how London's first ever Muslim mayor would cast his ballot. Sadiq Khan, who, by the way, in his first full week in office, welcomed his socialist counterpart from Paris.
Donald Trump says that obviously he would ban Muslims, but he says that he'd make an exception of Sadiq Khan. Is that okay?
Trump is stupid. He's very stupid. Mr. Trump is so stupid. My God, my God.
That's not an endorsement, Andre Neto, is it?
Not at all, but I understand. What I think it's most important in the whole Trump story is the fact that traditional political parties have been discredited, exactly. And around the world, not just in the United States, but here in France, in Germany, in Spain, in Brazil. And it's a global thing, and I'm worried about this. Trump is not just a example.
What do Brazilians think
example.
of Donald Trump? What do Brazilians think of Donald Trump?
We don't care about Donald Trump. We don't have time for asking questions about Donald Trump. We have so many Donald Trumps in Brazil.
All right. You just saw socialist Anne Hidalgo, first ever female mayor, by the way, of the French capital, and one who's worked a long time in Paris city politics, so she surely has her own opinion on the man you're about to see, although she's probably keeping it to herself. This is former deputy mayor from the Green Party, Denis Baupin, who this week stepped down as one of 6 deputy speakers of the French parliament to fight sexual harassment charges. 8 women came forth with claims that ranged from lewd text messages in meetings to groping. They kept silent for years, in one instance decades. The final straw was this tweet in support of International Women's Day they deemed so hypocritical, Régis Le Sommier, that they decided to speak up.
Yes, it's a big shake-up, but it seems that this pattern of things has been going on for quite some time, and we all know that in French politics, it's not something that's isolated, unfortunately, and it's not only the Green Party. There's a lot of other examples or instances.
Does it surprise you that they were able to keep it quiet for so long, even though there was been the Strauss-Kahn affair? We were all told, oh, this is going to be a watershed moment, and now things are going to be different.
Yes, because it's always been a struggle for women to be in politics in France. You're talking about Anne Hidalgo as being the first ever elected mayor of Paris. It's kind of rare in this country. Look at, she has many drawbacks. Ségolène Royal, but she was pounded for being a woman when she was running for president. And a lot of women felt at this time that there was something unfair about the way she was treating his portrait. I'm not talking about harassment. I'm not talking about that specific case, because the thing with Denis Baupin is very specific. It's not a question of tweeting, or not of text messages and stuff. It's the fact that he was threatening some of these girls of not getting a position in the cabinet, or being deprived of things. That's more blackmailing people into having sex with him, or it's French have always been very flirty. That's also our way of we're very different from Americans in that sense. But this type of behavior has been going on in politics for a long time, unfortunately.
And with French politicians, you also have this separation between your private life and your public life, because in Britain, no politician would dare do that, because the tabloids, the newspapers would be all over them.
Yes.
He hasn't resigned as an MP. Would he have had to resign as an MP in Britain?
He might have been suspended, or possibly. I'm not sure. I can't think of an example like that recently, because we have so few of these kind of scandals in Britain. I think precisely for the reason that politicians are scared. But I have to say, I'm surprised that after the Strauss-Kahn affair 5 years ago, that this sort of thing is still going on in France. I thought that really had changed attitudes, and that women were now able to speak out. We have half the cabinet in France.
Yeah,
are women.
That's the decision of Hollande.
And Sarkozy before him tried to do the same. So, and there are more women in positions of power, and yet still this sort of thing goes on. I think I read somewhere someone saying that there are just too many politicians who are men in their 60s, and once we change that, perhaps then this problem will reduce.
Yeah, probably.
Aaron Zaleski, is France changing?
If this is any indication, it doesn't seem to be. Or if it is, it's changing very slowly. The thing I keep hearing about this, that why people are expressing so much shock about this latest scandal, is the Green Party is supposed to be the ethical party, the party that supports women's rights, the party that's against sexism. So a lot of the outrage, I think, is coming from the fact that this was a Green Party politician whose wife, incidentally, is a minister in Hollande's government. So that's part of it.
Andre Neto?
We've been discussing for a couple of years the relationship between politicians and journalists, for example, in France. I think there's something to review in the political behavior here.
And last year, by the way, there was a petition, or not a petition, but a manifesto by French female journalists who cover politics,
Exactly.
saying they're victims of sexism.
Yeah, it's easy to see that in France this is a problem. Not just in France, let's be honest. It's the case in Brazil also. I can imagine it's the case sometimes in the United States also. Trump, again, is an example. Anyway, it's something, again, to rethink about politics in many countries.
This also comes on the heels of the finance minister, Michel Sapin, making a statement admitting that he had behaved inappropriately with a female journalist in the past. So it wasn't just this event on its own, the fact that it followed.
One thing that did encourage me about that was that the female journalist asked to see him privately straight afterwards, and apparently he apologised immediately once she explained to him that what he did was unacceptable.
Oh, that is a good sign.
So, at least women are now able to stand up and complain about this and make their voices heard, whereas before she might have just suffered this in silence.
Then again, there's the other side of this. I think it's good at this point that women speak up, but you have sometimes some of them, like I was, that guy, tried to rob me in the parliament in 1984. Why talk about it now? Why waiting for, being silent about it for so many years?
Well, one French senator came out and said that because she said she regrets now not having spoken up sooner.
Yeah, but then, why does she regret now? At what point, this is the problem, with that type of thing. It should be, and some of the facts also, some of those testimonies are prescripted. They're not going to be prosecuted in court. They need new and fresher, witness or attempts, and we haven't heard many of the, recent ones, so far.
All right, we bet that David Cameron is glad that it's Friday. It was never going to be easy hosting a long-scheduled anti-corruption summit after the family name came up in the Panama Papers revelations on tax havens. Then he had to welcome the leaders of nations he'd been caught disparaging, and to the Queen and the Archbishop of Canterbury.
So we've had a very successful cabinet meeting this morning. We were talking about our anti-corruption summit. We've got the Nigerians. We've got some leaders of some fantastically corrupt countries coming to Britain. Nigeria and Afghanistan, possibly the two most corrupt countries in the world.
But this particular president is actually not corrupt. No, he's trying very hard.
They are coming soon. They'll be very keen on a little bit of...
And the Queen, keeping that poker face, she remains silent. However, 24 hours later, another open mic, this time the Queen herself, as she greets the head of security during the recent state visit by China's president.
It was, I think, at the point that they walked out of Lancaster House and told me that the trip was off. I felt
they were very rude to the ambassador.
They were. Well, she was. Yes, Barbara. She was with me, and they walked out on both. It was very rude and very undiplomatic, I thought.
Very rude to the ambassador. Jana Jalil, it's an open mic indiscretion. Would you consider that, though, to be a gaffe? Because I've seen it described as...
With the Queen,
yeah.
Yes, I would actually, because I was really surprised to hear that the Queen had spoken so openly and candidly, because she is famous for never expressing an opinion, even though she's probably the world's most famous woman. She's very discreet. So the fact that she was saying that the Chinese were rude, it's not great for the British government, because they've been working so hard to develop what they call the golden relationship with China in order to get Chinese investment. Apparently the Chinese are so embarrassed by this that they're censoring the media about the Queen's comments.
But it's eavesdropping. It's not exactly, it's not like she said it in front of a mic.
Well, I've heard a very good explanation about why this happened, because the Queen is usually very good at avoiding mics, and apparently, that plastic umbrella she had, it acted like a satellite dish, and it kind of relayed her words further than they would have been, because the cameraman has worked with her for many years, and he was standing quite a way away, and he had a mic that wasn't that sensitive. But because she had a plastic umbrella, a see-through umbrella, rather than the usual fabric umbrella, her words carried, and he didn't have control of the feed. So all these television stations like the BBC picked it up and broadcast what she said. But David Cameron, I don't think that was a gaffe at all, actually. I think that was quite good publicity for his conference. He's got form in being quite indiscreet and getting his comments picked up. A couple of years ago, he was talking about the Queen purring down the line to him when he told her about the results of the Scottish referendum. And the Queen was very annoyed about that.
You think he did it on purpose?
No, I don't think he did it on purpose. But what happened was the Nigerian president and the Afghan president both came out and said, yes, our countries are corrupt. We are trying to deal with this. He wasn't saying the leaders were corrupt. And they acknowledged that. And it's well known. It's like saying the French like a glass of wine. This is something that's well known. There's huge corruption in Nigeria, huge corruption in Afghanistan.
Of course, the Nigerian president also said that he'd like to see some of the assets frozen by the UK that were confiscated from corrupt individuals in his country.
Yeah. I understand that it's a faux pas from both of them, but I think there is a positive side in the whole story. I think regarding the public opinion, I think it's important to know from time to time what the global leaders really think about the world, and I think it's healthy for democracy to understand people saying things like that. We've been living in hard times for politics. We have to have this poker face all the time. I think it's healthy.
A break from spin, but Aaron Zaleski, the Queen's role is to keep her mouth closed.
Usually, and again, like you were saying, I think it was entirely accidental because of the umbrella and the comments carried. So it wasn't an official statement. It was sort of these off-the-cuff remarks that people happen to overhear. And like you were saying, I thought David Cameron's comments were actually quite refreshing. And I mean, it wasn't as though he were saying anything that were untrue. In fact, according to the Global Corruption Perceptions Index, they release a study every year, and I think Afghanistan ranks is the third most corrupt country in the world. I think it's just above North Korea and Somalia. So what he was saying, it wasn't, as you mentioned, it wasn't this shocking, untrue.
Well, if it wasn't true, he wouldn't be holding this anti-corruption summit.
Exactly.
And is your opinion of the Queen higher or lower as a result?
I just think it's charming that she's committed a little faux pas because she is so discreet, so private, and you always want to know what the Queen is thinking. So just to get that little insight into her character is quite fascinating.
Chinese reactions? Were they very pissed with it?
Well, they're quite mortified because I think in China too, the Queen is highly respected, and it's not like it's the British government that said this, and it's private conversations. She was really saying what she truly thought. Yeah. So maybe the Chinese will think about how they handle the British ambassador or other ambassadors in the future.
So we should keep on the policy of the open mic.
All right, so David Cameron may come out looking better than we thought at the beginning of the week, but he's still got that Brexit to contend with, and Britain may vote for a Brexit. The EU may crumble. You'll still, though, have that ode to kitsch they call the Eurovision Song Contest. Woodstock, it ain't. But what is this? Amid the glittering costumes, the gushing arrangements, the strident ballads, Ukraine's entry, a protest song sung by the great-granddaughter of a Tatar Muslim among those deported by Stalin in the closing days of World War II.
When strangers are coming, they come to your house. They kill you all and say we're not guilty, not guilty. Where's your mind? Humanity cries. You think you are God, but everyone dies. Don't swallow my soul, our souls.
Russian lawmaker Robert Schlegel remarked that if Ukraine wants to submit a song about political issues to the Eurovision Song Contest, how about a song about corruption or political oppression in Kiev? It could also be successful, he said.
Yeah, I mean, it gives a little sparking to the Eurovision songs, which is a lot boring usually, and it produced really produced no major. I mean, a very few exceptions, and produced no major, singer or some people.
It's not boring in Russia, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, there's definitely it's political for these countries, but most of the time, I mean, the French are always pathetic, and it's I mean, and what's funny to watch is actually the amount of efforts that they put in that sometimes, like it's really, country after country, country against country.
Forgive me for saying this, a bit like the Olympics.
But you said it's a bit pathetic, and I agree with you. What I think it's pathetic is the fact that the Kremlin is worrying about this. Come on, who can worry about the Eurovision?
Andre Leto, last year, Armenia was asked to modify the lyrics of a song called Don't Deny because it pointed too directly at the genocide perpetrated by the Ottomans.
Was Erdogan threatening to sue?
The Georgians were told to tone down a song in 2009 that poked fun at Putin.
That's all about soft power at the end of the day, huh? And, again, I think we've been living pathetic times, and this is a little bit pathetic from Russia and from Ukraine also.
Aaron Zaleski, is your verdict as harsh when it comes to the Eurovision Song Contest and its contents?
Well, two things. As an American, it could just be my American perspective, but I find the whole thing a bit bewildering. I don't really understand what the fuss is about. I think it's generally bad music and bad outfits, and people take this really, really seriously, especially in the Nordic countries. I lived in Stockholm for about 2 years, and there were middle-aged finance guys who would get really into this, and they would take the whole evening watching this. Everybody was so into it.
So what is it about the Eurovision Song Contest?
I think it has to do with national pride for a lot of people. That's the impression I got, that it's supposed to be over the top and it's supposed to be kitsch and it's supposed to be fun, but at the end of the day, it has to do with national pride. And then where this Ukrainian song fits in by the singer Jamala, it's unusual in the fact that I understand that Eurovision has a no politics rule. You're not supposed to sing about politics at all, but somehow this song was able to bypass it. I suspect because she says it's about 1944. It's something that happened in the past. It's not really about what's happened.
It's about Stalin's actions against the Crimean
right.
So I'm surprised it got in because you're not supposed to have political lyrics.
Right.
But
But
because
they
it
were
happened a long
smart. I
time
mean,
ago.
the Ukrainian, I must say, was smart, using the tragedy of the Tatar at the end of World War II instead of their own tragedy with the famine that obviously killed 10 million people in Ukraine, and that was fabricated by Stalin from A to Z. So they used a minority that was like we know there were many minorities that were being either deported or completely annihilated.
So Janat Jalil, will you be canceling all your dates and sitting in front of the TV Saturday night to watch the Eurovision
I have to have the
Song
dates
Contest?
booked to watch them, so I won't be cancelling them because I'm not a huge Eurovision fan. But I know so many people that are in Britain, and it's wonderfully kitsch. It's fantastic to watch. You can get together with your mates and have a laugh, and it's just very funny. And Terry Wogan was a great commentator about it, and he used to make great jokes about it. It's something that just causes all kinds of amusement. I think the politics is quite good too. I mean, I was thinking about football in Britain because football's often been described as a substitute for war. And I think what's happened with Eurovision, it's become a sort of a symbolic battleground, if you like, between Russia and Ukraine. So I'd prefer that to an actual real battleground. I mean, we've got very sort of serious statements coming from Ukraine saying that they will boycott next year's Eurovision if Russia wins. So they take it very, very seriously. And apparently even Putin, he wants to see Russia win because he sees this as a way of Russia getting one up on Europe. That's how seriously they take it in Russia.
All right. Serious business, the Eurovision Song Contest. Janat Jalil, I want to thank you. I want to thank Andre Neto, Régis Le Sommier, Aaron Zaleski. Thank you for joining us here in The World This Week. Stay with us, though, because our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to Olivia Salazar-Winspear.
Good evening. Now we're starting with Brazil, as you did indeed. A lot of the online reaction this week, of course, has been focused on the suspension of Dilma Rousseff, and now attention's turning to the man who replaces her, Michel Temer. I think we've all heard the criticism about his cabinet, very white, very male, and of course this is a question of no mixed race or black people in the main ministries in a country where about half of the population identifies as mixed race or black. Online, of course, it's very divided, very pro-Dilma, anti-Dilma. But in terms of more institutional sources, in terms of the mainstream press, we have the former Chief of Justice of the Supreme Court in Brazil, Joaquim Barbosa, who tweeted, in fact, saying that Brazil must be the laughing stock of the world now. So that's quite strong criticism from him. He was interviewed in fact, your paper, the Estadão, saying that Temer does not have the legitimacy to lead this country. And in that interview, he does criticise Dilma Rousseff and some of her decisions, but he says the way this process has been conducted was not justifiable from a judicial point of view, and he has fears as to how this will affect the country's institutions and will scare off investors.
If there is this legitimacy problems, should there be or will there be snap elections?
It's my view, actually. It's my view. And I think the support for this view is growing in Brazil.
And indeed, from the Workers' Party, there are people saying that they will boycott this new government, that they won't comply with him, they won't see him or recognise him as a real leader. We've got tweets from people who are serious here. Fatima Bezerra had time for a joke saying, well, at least Temer is thinking about minorities, that is, men who are slightly in the minority, white people and extremely rich people who are also in the minority. Many of them, of course, criticising the closure of certain ministries in Brazil. Human rights and racial equality has now become a second-tier ministry kind of absorbed into the justice ministry, and culture as well is now off the map, more or less. Something that caused artists from Brazil, musicians and artists, we've got Caetano Veloso and Gilberto Gil there, writing an open letter saying they're against the closure of the Ministry of Culture. Gilberto Gil, of course, who was culture minister under Lula some 10 years ago. Like I say, social media has been perhaps more vocal, more divided, a lot of jokes, things like a meme on the Brazilian flag, which was order and progress, and they've replaced that with order and regression, or here, order and the evangelical group in Parliament, which is a whole other story. But it is being used for more serious purposes, that is organising protests and movements like this one in Sao Paulo for the weekend, which has already got an awful lot of interest, thousands and thousands of people.
And what does golpista mean?
Well, he's the coup monger.
Oh, dear.
Leader of the coup. Now, moving to revolutions here in France, perhaps a little bit smaller, but important nonetheless. Julia Roberts has hit the headlines for being on the red carpet in Cannes, bare feet, in bare feet. She wasn't wearing any shoes. Now, it wasn't just absent-mindedness, which I thought it could be, because, you know, let's face it, we all forget things when we're going to a big event now and again. She's protesting against the position of the Cannes Film Festival last year, who refused women entry to certain events because they weren't wearing the right footwear. That is, they weren't wearing heels. So this move has been applauded by the French Courrier International, who headlined saying, if we burned our bras, why don't we burn our heels too? And they take the opportunity to make reference to Nicola Thorpe in the UK, the woman who was sent home from work for not wearing heels on her first day of the job.
And there's a petition now that's going to mean that there's been so many signatures now that Parliament's going to have to take up the bill when it comes to high heels. So
I think the company backed down, the company in question. They completely backed down.
They said they'll review their appearance
I
policy.
think she can now wear flats, so it's fine in that case. But she really has highlighted a big issue for a lot of women who work in the city and feel under pressure to work, especially as receptionists, because they're on their feet all day, or even in restaurants where women are asked to wear heels when they're waitressing. So she has really highlighted this issue. I don't know if it will quite make it to Parliament, though.
Well, maybe it will be Nicola Thorpe first and the Cannes Film Festival next. Perhaps they will follow suit and allow women to wear something more comfortable.
All right, we'll have to see. Many thanks. Olivia Salazar-Widspear. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in The World This Week.